Alright, what's up, junkies? It is 2025 now. We have wrapped up the 2024 racing season, and I'm going to do a video here on how much we spent racing. This will give you a little bit of information as well on some kind of track day related activities, as well as just general bike maintenance. And so this will be a good video for people, even if you're not actually racing. Maybe you're interested in racing and want to see how much it could cost. Maybe you're just wanting to do some track days, and there'll be some relevant information in here for you as well. In terms of how I went about doing racing, I really didn't have a budget here. We really just kind of kept track of how much we spent. Now I can more effectively budget for this going forward. I did try to do this fairly cheaply, so you can definitely spend way more money than this if you want to, but you know, you're probably not getting a ton below this. So in terms of how 2024 went, we'll just do a little bit of a season recap. How did my first season racing go? You know, I had to set some realistic expectations for myself. Overall, I think it actually went really well. We'll talk a little bit about the good and the bad, and then let's talk about where we ended up in terms of results. The bad is, well, first off, we spent a lot of money. We had a lot of fun spending the money, but we did spend a lot of money. It's also a pretty large time commitment, traveling to the racetracks, and you got to take time off on a Friday and maybe a Monday to get there and back, or it's just, you know, kind of the maintenance and all the other activities that go along with it that aren't just the actual racing itself. It is a pretty big time sink. The good though, like what went well, you know, we made some great friends. That's probably first and foremost. We're club racing here. We're not trying to like actually make a career out of this. Really, this is about having a good time, doing what you love doing, and like meeting new people who also love doing what you're doing, and just making friends and having a good time. And we definitely did that. We definitely got better at riding as well. So that is one thing everyone who races will tell you, is that you inevitably just get better at riding. I mean, it is more track time and just kind of seat time on the bike, but even if you did the same number of track days as you did rounds of racing, you're just going to get better racing. You're just with faster people. What else? It just really gives me an opportunity to do what I love doing, which is racing. It's such a fun activity to try to put yourself in a little bit of like a flow state when you're in there. It's an awesome experience, and I love doing it. I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. So let's see, results. So I started off the year knowing that I was going to do the Super Stock 600 class with PanAmerican. And they are structured into amateur and expert. Really what I'm going to focus on is amateur. I had originally prioritized Super Stock 600, and then the other major one, though, I did start doing throughout the year was the Superbike 600. I never did that in the first Miami round, and I also didn't race in that class in the NOLA round. The rounds after that I did race in. The last kind of note on where I ended up was also I missed the last Miami rounds. Pan America usually only races on Sunday. For the last round they race on Saturday and Sunday, and both of those days are double points, so that's a lot of points to give up if you're not there. I put myself in the hospital before that round, and I was not going to be fit to ride. Other people missed other rounds, so like points all kind of work out where they're supposed to be. Amateur Super Bike 600, I got 5th out of 32 riders. Super Stock 600, I ended up 2nd out of 44 riders for the amateur class. Really stoked with that result. I had no intention of ending the year in that way. I can't complain. That's an awesome result for first year racing. It is amateur class. And then overall amateur throughout all classes, I ended up 8th out of about 123 riders. So still top 10, definitely want to build on that for the 2025 season. But that's where we ended up for 2024. So what did it cost to get there? What you're looking at right now is kind of the raw data here. This is where I just tried to keep track of everything I spent money on. I did try to categorize some of these. I put these into events. And then I also started to look at, is this an anticipated reoccurring cost? Tires are something that's just you're gonna keep paying for those. A bike purchase is a great example of one. I'm hoping I don't have to keep buying a new bike. There is also the idea of a crash expense. So like if I bin the bike, is this a part I may have to replace? So in terms of the preseason, I definitely had some big expenses to get ready for this. I did include in this total the purchase of the bike. I do have this broken down then into round one with Miami. This was a fairly long way away from where I live, one of the longest trips, so the travel costs on this one are going to be a little bit higher. The fees might be a little bit lower on this round because I actually only did Superstock 600. We did do some practice CMP track day back in February of last year. We did some maintenance in between there, then went to NOLA, another really long trip for me. So we had a bunch of travel expenses there. You will notice I actually don't have any tire expenses in here because I had actually purchased some tires during the Miami round, which were rain tires, and it rained pretty much all of NOLA. So we got away a little bit cheaper because it rained all weekend. We then went to a practice round at Roebling, spent some money on tires, some fees, all of that. We had to do some maintenance in between here. I tend to try to do like full fluid flushes every kind of 2 times out on track. Oil, coolant, brake fluid. You can debate all day long as to whether that's useful or not, but the cost of that is just not all that significant in the total cost of how much you're going to spend for racing for the year. So I just do it. It also is an opportunity for me to kind of pull the bike apart, get the bodywork off, inspect everything, make sure everything looks as it should. If you're not doing that regularly, you're going to miss something and it's going to end poorly for you. Round 3 was in Talladega. Again, another fairly long trip for me. We did end up doing both Super Stock and Superbike 600, the bundle on that, so Grand Course and a sprint for both of those. Fees are going to be a little bit higher there. Then we did some maintenance in there. Then we had our Roebling round. Roebling's going to be the closest track for me. So travel expenses are almost non-existent for that one. We did another practice round at CMP. The last one was at Roebling for me. This was round 5. There were a couple of canceled rounds within here. Road Atlanta and Barber were both originally on the schedule, did get canceled. I mean, the season had 6 rounds. Round 5 was the last one for me. In between here, I did end up going to another track day, and that's when I put myself in the hospital. This is where my season ended. As you can see here, we've got a grand total down here of $29,000. So let's see how that breaks down. Totals for the different rounds, as I mentioned, round 1 was a pretty long distance away. That was the first round, so we're just going to have to buy some things that we maybe got to use in subsequent rounds. And then you can see it kind of starts to even out a little bit. But we can see about an average per round is about $1,700, $1,800. And I think talking with other people around the paddock, this seems to be about correct. But I think this is a reasonable number to budget for going into, certainly for me going into next season. And if you're looking to get into it, this gives you an idea of where you're probably going to be at. So other kind of totals for the season, preseason. So this is like bike purchase, all of these things. This is going to be a pretty significant chunk of the money that I spent. Miscellaneous maintenance, I don't think I highlighted it over here, but I did end up buying a second bike here. So bike purchase, fairly cheap, but I did end up buying a second bike. So that's going to add into it as well. These two numbers are a little bit inflated just due to purchasing a bike, but there's also, they're bigger numbers in general, just because that's where you got to spend your money. Maintenance, as well as kind of getting ready for the year. This also includes some things like the original safety gear, so like the suit, the helmet, your gloves, your boots, all of those are going to be fairly big ticket items as well. You're going to be spending a couple grand on that at least. And then the track days. So what we can see here is that the average track day that we went to, somewhere around $1,000 to for fuel, travel, tires, fees, and everything to get to the track day. So that seems about reasonable to me. It's less money than the actual racing round, but it still is a significant cost of money. Now, I do usually go, when I'm saying a track day, I usually go for a whole weekend, so this will end up being like a Saturday, Sunday track day. And then the last one I'll touch on here is the medical expenses. I wanted to throw this in here because I think it's important to realize the risk that is involved in racing. I even had an airbag on for this incident. It never deployed, and so I ended up with some broken bones. I ended up with a separated AC joint on this side. In terms of cracked bones, it was a clavicle, a scapula, a couple vertebrae, my sternum, a handful of ribs, and then the clavicle was actually so displaced that it went down and punctured my lung, which was what ended up keeping me in the hospital for a few days to kind of reinflate that, get the fluids out, and kind of keep that thing inflated. It can get expensive when you crash, so make sure you have good medical insurance. Make sure that you are covered for any activity that you are doing, and if you're not covered, understand the risk that is involved when you go into it. What did I actually get billed for after this was significantly less than this. I think my out-of-pocket max is like $3,000 for the year or something. So make sure you understand your insurance, what you pay for it. Make sure you understand the risk going into it. No, I did not pay $125,000 to go racing this year, plus the $30,000 or whatever. So it didn't actually cost me that much, but I wanted to throw this in there because it is a realistic risk. Not everyone's going to have the same medical insurance that I do, and mine ended up being pretty good for this incident. So let's look at the totals for what we spent. I tried to do these in terms of the categories. We've got a bike purchase. That's both bikes. So the main one that I ride as well as the parts bike, $7,000. That's fairly cheap as far as bikes go. To get two bikes for $7,000, most people don't even get one bike for $7,000. We are doing this a little bit on a budget. That being said, that bike purchase is still it's a quarter of the cost that it cost me to go racing. Fees for the year, I haven't compared every single org between like PanAmerican, Wira, Azra. The fees are all structured slightly differently. I don't know how much this will change if I switch orgs. It's not going to change all that much. Like the tracks cost X amount of dollars to rent out, and the org has to cover that some way. So like however they split that up, it's likely going to filter down to be roughly the same. So I don't expect much change there, and that is a significant portion of how much you pay. The next big one is tires. Tires are definitely going to be a pretty big chunk of how much money you spend. I was also running Pirellis, which are a little bit more expensive, but again, it's not like if you switch to Dunlops, they're half the cost, 90% of the cost or something. So you're not going to find a ton of savings here, but if you do go down to a smaller bike, like a 300, 400, the twins class bikes, you may get to save a little bit of money just because you're not going to burn through the tires quite as quickly. Upgrades. This is one where you probably also can save a little bit of money, especially if you already have a track prepped bike. I would also say on this one, be careful about how much you upgrade your bike. There's limited gains to have here. Travel, depending on where you live, this could vary a lot. So where I was compared to where PanAmerican races were, going down to Florida, going over to NOLA, going over to Alabama, those are long trips for me. We're talking 10, 12, 16 hours to get to all these places, but especially by the time you're towing a trailer. If you live closer to someplace, it's going to be cheap. Maintenance ended up being about the same as travel, 9% there. We're within a couple $100 of each other. And that's, I don't really anticipate that going up or down very much. That's probably going to stay about the same. Protection, I bought a suit, a helmet, gloves, boots in the beginning of the year. I went and crashed. Now I got to buy new stuff. Should get a new suit. You might be able to make the other one work, but I think I'm just going to use that one as a spare suit and get a new suit. And then I picked up a sponsor for 2025 for a helmet, Suomi, so I ended up grabbing one of their helmets. Tools and shop, I actually think this one is one where this may go down. When you start doing a lot of maintenance and work on your bike, you're going to run into things that you don't have tools for, and you're either going to pay someone else to do it or buy the tool to do it yourself. So you end up accumulating these tools. Now, once you have the tool, you probably don't have to buy the tool again. Training. This is actually one where I think we might go up. If you go racing, you're going to have to take a race license, and that's going to cost something. It's probably about $600. I don't have to go to that race school again, but I actually probably will start investing more in training, whether that's some like one-on-one coaching, going to some clinics or something, some sort of schools to help me become a better and safer rider. Social engagement, this is pictures that I purchased from photographers throughout the year. I like supporting the photographers that come out. Go pay for some photographs. Be thankful that they're out there. Cool. So conclusions. Where can you save money? Like I mentioned, bike purchase. If you already got the bike, great. That's a huge chunk gone. Upgrades. I don't have any actual concrete data to support the claim I'm about to make, but I don't think I actually got faster because of any upgrades I did. I got faster throughout the season, but that was really primarily, and I can almost definitively say it was because of seat time and experience, not because of any sort of upgrade I did to my bike. So I would say if you want to save some money, don't go for the new shiny object. Work on the seat time. Tires, personally, if I was doing track days, I wouldn't run slicks. They wear out faster. They are faster, but you got to run warmers. They're more expensive. A good track day tire these days, like a DOT track day tire, is a really good tire, and I would argue that for most people out there, you're not going to get additional time out of slicks as much as you are improving just like your technique and your lines and what you're doing while you're out there. So this is another area, especially if you're just doing track days. I would hesitate. I won't tell you not to get slicks. They're fun. They're cool. I ran them in track days before I started racing. They do give you more confidence and everything, and that can definitely help with times. But I think once you build a level of confidence in the bike, then you start to realize you could probably turn some pretty quick lap times on just regular like track day tires. It's also annoying to run warmers. If you can get away without running warmers, it's way easier. You go slower for the first 2 laps out. For next season, same bike, probably a different league. I don't want to like say anything bad about PanAmerican Superbike. It was an awesome league for me to jump into as a new rider. It just simply comes down to the fact that I don't want to go down to Miami all the time. I don't want to go to NOLA, especially Miami is one they're going to go to like at least a couple times, maybe even more throughout the year. It's also one that I don't get to go to track days at in between those times, so I'm not going to perform particularly well there. It's a long trip for me to go for a league that's primarily based out of and catering towards people in Florida. Probably going to do WIRA and specifically the Atlantic Coastal League for next year. It's a lot of Roebling, which would be good for me, and also Road Atlanta, that I think would be really fun to race at. So we've probably got another 2 months or so before the season starts. So we'll continue trying to heal up all of this stuff, get back into fighting weight, and get the bike back together. I've got some cool stuff coming for this year, so I'm really excited about it. And we will see you next season.